technician or a general, there's going to be a VE exam so you can have an opportunity to upgrade your license. So that's all I have at this point in time. So I'll turn it back to you, Jerome.
Excellent, thank you. Yep. Only other club business is if your membership is expiring, there is a new process. We've been sending out emails on how to update your membership. If you're want to sign up as a new member, you essentially just sign up and create an account. But we appreciate everyone's patience during that process. We understand that it is a bit of a pain point for everyone, but we are working through it. So we appreciate that. Again, a lot of volunteer opportunities. We are looking for a membership chairperson as well. Kathy Velhauer is looking to step down in September. So if anybody is interested in that, get a hold of us. More info on our website, w0tx.org /officers. Let me share my screen here real quick. If I can do it quick enough. No, I can't do it quick enough. Plenty of opportunities for net control operators. We just had someone else signing up to work as a Sunday night net controller, so we really appreciate that. Let me share my screen actually real quick here, just to show the last couple of things here. We appreciate everyone who is able to participate with that. There is a net script for our Sunday night net and our Wednesday night net, and there is a check-in tool, w0tx.org /check-in. We give access to our net control operators. You type in a call sign, and it automatically fills in everything for you. So if you don't feel comfortable taking a net control, we are more than happy to train and work with you on that. So lots of volunteer opportunities, lots of people helping right now. So can't thank enough everyone for helping out with our website, our roundtable, everything really. So club elections coming up next month, September. So we were going to have this in person, but just for ease of use, we will have this online. So our next month meeting, September, will be online as normal, and our club elections are up at that time, and there are people up for re-election, some board members and some others. So if anybody's interested, there's some additional opportunities there as well. I think that's all that I had, unless anybody had any questions.
What time do we? I haven't gotten anything on the AmFest. What time do we show up? If we volunteered.
Saturday at 2 p.m. is when setup will begin. Our coordinator, Bill, W0YKV, has, I believe, sent out a few emails. So you should see something if you haven't already before then. But Saturday the 25th at 2 p.m. we'll start to set up. And if you're helping check people in on the day of, then it'll be 7 or 8 a.m. on the day of. You may want to get a hold of, if you want, Bill Worthington, drcfest at w0tx.org. I think he's also on our page here. He has his phone number on here as well if you want to get a hold of him.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we do stream this on youtube.com /Denver Radio Club. So if you've missed this or past meetings, you can check that out. So with that, I'll throw it over to Fred, W6BSD. Thank you so much for joining us here, and go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm gonna can I share my screen?
You should be able to. Yes, you should be able to. Let me know if you run into any issues.
I'm gonna share a window.
Hey, Dean, I'm checking in on the meeting. It's Chris Keating.
Can you see the presentation?
I do. Just briefly, I am the administrator of this call, so if anybody hasn't muted themselves, please do so. Otherwise, I'll mute you if not. But we can see the meeting. Go right ahead.
Okay, just one thing before we start. I cannot see you. I cannot see the chat right now. So
that's fine.
If you have any question or anything like that, it's okay to stop me and ask the question. Don't wait until the end. I think that makes the discussion more lively when there's a discussion. So today I'm going to talk about HF antenna for beginner. So I'm going to start with, it's going to be in two parts. There's going to be a quick overview on things that I saw on YouTube or people are saying on repeaters. They're kind of true-ish, true with a grain of salt, or true but not not all the time. So I'm going to try to go on through that overview, and then I'm gonna kind of present different type of antenna. On some of the antenna, I'm gonna go by pretty quickly. And if you want to if you have more questions on those antenna, you can same thing. You can stop me and then we can talk about those antenna. So first thing, antenna height. Is higher better? So no, it's not. The height is not always the best. So if you're interested, I'm talking about HF here, not VHF UHF. But if you want to have a good radiation pattern on your antenna and you want to work DX, meaning stations that are far away, you need to have your antenna at half of a wavelength to a wavelength high. If you're below half of the wavelength, your antenna is going to act as an NVIS. An NVIS is for local communications. So on the multiband antenna, you cannot be at the optimum height on all those bands. So if you look at the radiation pattern on the side, for example, you're going to see that can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay, so here I'm showing the radiation pattern at half of a wavelength. So that's kind of radiation pattern you want to have. You want to have a low takeoff angle, and you don't want to have lobes all over the place, because the lobes going, for example, like that antenna with the lobe going up, that means that energy is going to the sky, and it's a loss energy. So that's kind of the ideal radiation pattern you want to have. So if you're too high, then you start to develop lobes. Like here, for example, you have plenty of lobes. So you have a very low takeoff angle on that lobe, but then you have you develop lobes, and that energy is going up in the sky. So that may be good if you want to talk to a friend that is in at some specific location, but then you're gonna have some holes, some places where you cannot reach, or it will be hard to reach those stations, and you may have a hard time. You have an antenna that is super high, and you're gonna wonder why your buddy with the lower antenna is making more contact than you. It's because those lobes, they're shooting a signal in the sky. So for example, at 10 meters high or 30 feet, a multiband antenna, it's at 1/8 of the wavelength on 80 meter, meaning that's the first low radiation pattern you see here. And at that height, you also have a lot of attenuation caused by the ground. So that antenna on 80 meter is going to be an NVIS antenna. You're going to talk to the people around you at maybe 100 miles around you, but then it's going to be hard to talk to people far away. So that doesn't mean you will never talk to anyone far away. That just means it's going to be harder. You're going to have a very, very high propagation, or some ideal atmospheric conditions someday to make those DX contacts. But in general, it's going to be hard. On 40 meter, you're a quarter wave length high. That means same thing. It's gonna be mainly local communications. On 20 meter, that's when you start having a good antenna. On 15 meters, you start to develop, it's 1/3. So that's the kind of radiation pattern you're gonna have. So you're gonna start shooting signal up in the sky. And at 30 feet on 10 meters, that's the full wave. Yeah, here, that's the radiation that you're gonna have. So you're gonna have a very low takeoff angle that's gonna help you to do DX contacts, but most of the signal is gonna be sent higher. So that's about the radiation pattern. Any question on that?
That's any kind of antenna, or are you talking a particular kind of antenna?
I'm talking about the dipole.
Okay.
Or wire antenna in general.
Got it. Okay.
After that, I'm going to talk about vertical antenna, which have a very low takeoff angle. So on vertical antenna, you're going to see that kind of low takeoff angle, even lower than that. So next thing is polarization. So when you have I guess you guys know what is a vertical and horizontal polarization. So when you have two antennas, for example, on VHF, UHF, you have one is vertically polarized and the other one is horizontally polarized. You're going to have an attenuation of 20 dB because the wrong polarization. That's going to be true on VHF, UHF because it's a line of sight. You have two antenna pointing towards each other, and you're going to feel that attenuation. On HF, that doesn't matter anymore, the polarization. It doesn't work like that because 99% of your contacts on HF, they're going to be through the ionosphere. And once your signal bounces off of the ionosphere, it changes the polarization of your signal. So your signal becomes circularly polarized. Some people, they say, oh yeah, it's random. It's not random. It's a circularly polarized signal. So it doesn't matter on the receive or transmit if you have vertically or horizontally polarized anymore when you go through the ionosphere. So the vertical or horizontal, the only thing that's going to be affected with that is going to be your takeoff angle. So on the vertical antenna, you're going to have a very good takeoff angle. So that's why, for example, DX, big stations that are doing DX on 80 meter, they're going to have arrays of vertical 80 meter antenna. They don't want a dipole because they cannot put a dipole high enough first, and the second, they're going to get a very low takeoff angle on vertical antenna, or sometimes they have arrays of 40 meter vertical antennas also to get a very good, very low takeoff angle. The polarization is going to partially determine the noise level you're going to get because the man-made noise is vertically polarized. So that your antenna may be more sensitive to the noise. But here's the prime. Most of the noise you're going to get when you're listening is going to come from the common mode current you get into your cable. We talk about that a little bit before the presentation, and I think you had a presentation on coax also, and so that's why you want to eliminate that common mode current because you want to the noise. Most of the noise is going to come from your coax. If you have a dipole, for example, at the right height and everything, and then you have a coax going down, that coax, if you don't have a choke at your feed point, that coax is going to become part of the antenna. That coax is going to be vertically polarized, and it's going to grab all that noise and bring that noise to your radio. So that's the vertical antenna itself. I saw vertical antenna. There's more quiet than dipoles because of the setups, because the noise doesn't comes from, it's true, it's more noisy, but most of the noise is not coming from the antenna, but from the feed line. And like I said before the presentation, vertical antenna, they should be grounded because you need to have a ground rod and you need to have a good ground because it's not too much of a concern in California, but I think you guys have pretty nasty lightning storms. And anything that is metallic and sticking up straight into the sky, that kind of has a tendency to attract lightning. Any questions? Okay, I'm continuing. So then you're going to see when you buy an antenna and you look at an antenna on the antenna book, you're going to see DBD or DPI. So DBD is the gain of your antenna expressed in either compared to a dipole or compared to an isotropic antenna or radiator. So a lossless half-wave dipole is defined as a 2.15 dB. That's they came with that number, by doing math equations, not because measuring. It's just a mathematical, it's mathematical. They determine that 1 dB d-gal is equal of a dBi plus 2.5 dB. So the gain of the antenna. So for example, if you have a 6 dB gain on your antenna and you transmit with 100 watt, it doesn't mean that now you're transmitting with 400 watts. It doesn't, the power doesn't come from nowhere. It just means that you're focusing your signal in one direction, and your signal is stronger in that direction, but you are still transmitting with 100 watts. It's just the focus of your signal is more towards some direction. It just indicates how strong the antenna can send and receive in that direction. Also, more dB means you have a lower radiation angle. That's easy to see on the vertical antenna, because the vertical antenna, the lower you have your radiation angle. So basically, if you have a round shape like a globe, you are radiating in all directions. If you have I'm gonna probably go back. So here, that signal is radiated on all those directions. Now you see that you have the same strength, but you don't radiate up in the sky. So you're focusing your signal more, towards the horizon. So that's that. When I said you have a lower takeoff angle, that's what I mean. So the more the lower your takeoff angle, the more gain you're going to have in up on your horizon. Your signal is going to be more focused. I don't know if I'm being clear. Oh yeah, and vendors, they have a tendency to kind of confuse you. They kind of mix and match DBD and DBI because they like to use DBI, for example, because it's a bigger number. So, but you need to be careful when you buy an antenna, or when you need to look at those things and use the critical thinking about what they're saying. If they say, oh yeah, my dipole is I don't know, 5 dB gain, there's some catch somewhere, because that doesn't exist. The next thing I want to talk about is SWR. So, so let's say you have an imaginary station. You have a 100-watt antenna. So I'm showing with my mouse the antenna, and sorry, an 100 ohm impedance antenna, and you connect a 100 ohm cable, and you go all the way to your station, and now you have a barrel connector, and you connect your station, which is a 50 ohm rig, with a 50 ohm, 2 feet 50 ohm coax. So you have a 100 feet of 100 ohm, and here you have 2 feet or 3 feet of 50 ohm. So the reflected wave is going to start from here, because the mismatch is here. You're connecting 50 ohm to 100 ohm, and you're going to have a reflected wave only on those 2 feet of coax. Here, on the 100 feet of coax and at the antenna, you will have a 1-to-1 SWR on that part, and you will have no reflected wave. If you use the same setup, but now you put a 50 ohm coax on a 100 ohm antenna, you go all the way to your antenna tuner, and you have 2 feet of 50 ohm from the tuner to your radio. Now you're going to have a SWR 2-to-1 across that 100 feet of coax, because the mismatch is here. So you're mismatching 50 ohm with 100 ohm, you're going back, and then your tuner is going to present a 1-to-1, I mean, the good impedance to your radio, so you're going to see a 1-to-1 SWR. So that means any additional loss caused by the SWR are going to be greater here than on that setup. You're going to have more losses on that setup here than on the first one. So the way you should do it, if you want to be efficient, is this way. You have a 50 ohm rig, 50 ohm coax, you go all the way to your antenna, you put your antenna tuner at the antenna, and then you can connect that antenna with a 50 ohm coax. And then your additional losses, they're going to be only on that 2 feet of coax instead of being on the 100 feet of coax. So the key point here is as the reflected wave start where you have the mismatch. So it's not going to start at the antenna in that case. It's going to start here, and you're going to have only on those 2 feet, you're going to have a 2-to-1 SWR. You're going to have a reflected wave on 2 feet of coax, and on that part here, that's 90% of the amateur that the setup they have, and on that part they have additional losses due to SWR because they run 100 feet of coax, and the mismatch is here and not close to the radio. If you have, for example, a dipole, if you install your dipole correctly, you are going to have a 73, 75 ohm impedance on your dipole, because that's the dipole, that's the impedance, the typical impedance of a dipole. If it's lower than that, it's because it's not installed at the right height. If you're higher than that, it's because same thing, is not at the right height. But if your dipole is resonant and you should have a 75 ohm of impedance. So meaning you can feed your dipole with a 75 ohm coax all the way from the antenna to your radio, and the mismatch is going to be at radio and not at the antenna, and you will have less losses. Any questions on that? Okay, so how do you know how much losses due to the SWR you get? And they're not huge. It's just a few. I mean, not even a dB often. So it's here's an example. If you have a 70 feet of RG58, it's a pretty cheap cable. I didn't update the prices for the last 3 years or 4 years, so maybe it's more expensive now. But it's going to be a pretty cheap cable. On 40 meters, for example, on 7 megahertz, you're going to have, let's say, 1.1 dB losses across your 70 foot of coax. If you have a SWR 3-to-1, you have a loss of 0.5 dB. So to do that, I use that graph here. So how you to use that graph is you take your 1.1 dB on the x-axis, you go on the 1.1 and you draw a line all the way to that line, which is the SWR of 3. And then you look on the left side, and that's going to give you the SWR losses, additional losses due to the SWR. So with the 3 dB, with the SWR of 3-to-1 and 70 feet of coax on 40 meters, you're going to get 0.5 dB additional losses due to the SWR. So now if you switch, for example, to LMR 400, it's going to be a 0.6 dB losses instead of 1.4. And I go to the SWR of 3, and oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. And here you're going to get 0.3 something, 34, 33 dB of additional losses on that coax. So meaning spending way more money to try to mitigate the additional losses due to the SWR is not, you're not gaining much by spending way more money into the cable. If you want to do the math around that, this is the formula. This is how you calculate the additional losses due to the SWR. If you don't want to run that math, you can use that chart on the left, or you can use I put online a loss calculator. It's going to give you more information than just what I'm giving you here. And you just plug your frequency, you plug your length of cable, the type of cable you're using, and it's going to give you all those numbers. Questions?
Glad to hear about the cabling, because we get that question asked quite frequently. Should they buy more expensive cabling? And it sounds like it's not really going to be worth it. So that's good.
No, if you have a good SWR at your antenna, and buying more expensive cable, you're going to get less cable losses. But on 40 meters, for example, it's not worth it to buy a super expensive cable because you're going to have very little losses on the cable anyway. If you are on 2 meters and if you are on 440 or higher, then the cable is going to become a big problem. But on HF, even on 10 meters, a cheap cable, that's not going to bring you more. And don't forget one thing is 1 SDB, it's one S unit on your radio, it's a 6 dB. So that means if you want to gain 1 S unit, you need to multiply your signal by 4, which just by gaining few dB of in the coax, that will not bring you 1 S unit on your radio.
Okay, very cool.
I'm talking about HF here. VHF, UHF is, especially UHF and up, it's a different problem. You can have all the way to 10 dB of losses in short run of coax on UHF or on 900 megs. So now we're going to talk about antennas. The thing I'm trying to do here is to explain that antenna, they're easy to build. Even if you build the wrong antenna, you're going to make contact because HF is pretty forgiving. You may not have an antenna that is going to be super efficient. You may not be able to talk to on the other side of the world, but you will be able to make contacts. And if you take a piece of wire and you start to build a dipole and you start to play with it, you're going to learn something, and then it's going to give you a better idea on how you want to set up your antenna and what you want to do and what you can do with your radio and your the environment you have around you to put an efficient antenna. And the only way to learn that is to try antennas. And unless you have disposable income and you can buy dozens of antenna and try them all, I think building them, experimenting, it's a good way to do that. So dipole is the base antenna, is the easiest to build. It's just a piece of wire fed with a coax or anything, and you just string that thing put that thing in the trees. You put that thing at whatever height you want, and you start to make contact. You will be able to make contact. So if you are just experimenting, that thing you see here is perfectly fine. You don't have to put a common choke here. You can go from unbalanced to balanced. It's going to be really forgiving. And you put a wire, you don't even have to be super precise on how you cut your wire, because the internal tuner of your radio will be able to tune that thing if you cut the wire roughly at the right length, and you can start transmitting and you can start having contact with that thing. And especially if you're into FT8s, you're gonna probably work the entire US and probably outside the US with a kind of a roughly made dipole. So dipole is easy to build. You can put it vertical, inverted V, inverted L, a sloper, in zigzag. You can do pretty much anything you want. A dipole is a monoband antenna. So there is a dipole that are kind of multi-band, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And please don't buy a $200 dipole, because dipole is just a piece of wire, a copper wire, and 2 pieces of PVC or plexiglass as an insulator. That's all you need. And I don't think the reason why to buy a $150 or $200 dipole. That's I think it's a waste of money. To build a dipole, that's easy. It's just a half of wavelength. So you take the speed of light and you divide by the frequency. or you take the speed of light, you take 300 and you divide. So 300 is because it's close enough to the speed of light, and you divide by the frequency in megahertz. So the length of your, so here the example is on 20 meters, 14.1. It's going to be 21.27 meters. So 20 meters is really 21. Now you need to divide that thing by 4, and you're going to have the length of your each branch of your dipole. That's all. It's going to be 5.3 meters. If you do that, don't cut 2 feet longer, 1 foot longer, and then try to trim it. If you do exactly that and you put that thing up, it's going to work. You may not have a perfect SWR, but like I said, the internal tuner on your radio will be able to make that antenna work, and you will be able to make contact with that thing. So then you can use add the velocity factor of the wire if you want. So you will cut that antenna more precisely. But just cutting it at 5.3 meters, putting 2 knots and connecting it to your radio, that's going to work. And then if you see a high SWR, you can trim your antenna. You can try to figure out where is the lowest SWR and trim your antenna. But I'm pretty sure if you do exactly that formula and you cut exactly that length, your antenna is going to work perfectly. Dipole installation. So like I said before, higher is not necessarily better. So if you want to do DX contact, if you want to talk to people far away, you need to install your antenna between half of wavelength and the wavelength. That's the maximum height you want to go. And according to a paper published by VOCAP, which is the Voice of America analysis program, the best height is 3/5 of a wavelength. So if you look at that graph here, they take 160 meter, 80 meter, and 10 meters, and you see the 3 lines. They have the same pattern. And if you look at 0.6, that's so on the y-axis here is that's the strength of the signal on the receive station. So that's where you have the highest strength. So then it goes down, and then it goes back up again when you are at 1.10, 1.10 of the wavelength, and then you start to go down again, and then you start to go down, kind of slope down. It never go back up. So that's your 2 main height you want to have your antenna. Also, the antenna, when you install your antenna, the impedance, the typical impedance of a dipole is 75 ohm, but that impedance is going to be a function of the height of your antenna. So here you have your antenna at 0.3 wavelength, you're going to have 100 ohm. And if you continue to go up, at 0.5 half of a wavelength, you're going to be around 75, 73, 70 ohm. And then it's going to continue to go down. So if you are at 0.6 of a wavelength, you're going to be close to the 50 ohm. And then it's going to start to shoot up again. And then the curve is going to go down and up and down. And it's going to kind of converge with, towards that 75 ohm line. So if you are at that height, it's okay. You're going to be close to 50 ohm. You don't need to do anything. If you have your antenna too low, you're going to end up having a 100 ohm. And if you have an 80 meter antenna that is way too low, you may end up being here having 50 ohm of impedance, but that means your antenna is way too low to be any efficient. If you install your antenna, your dipole permanently, you should put a choke because that's gonna kind of eliminate some of the noise and some of the common mode current you're gonna have on your antenna. Any questions?
Hey, Fred.
Yeah.
You said earlier put that choke at the feed point, so that's up as close to the antenna as you can get it.
So I'm gonna tell you. Yeah, so you want to have a choke at the feed point. If you buy an antenna, often you're going to see a box, and then you're going to see 2 screws where you can hook, kind of screw your wire. Sometimes that box that you have that's going to support your antenna and where you're going to plug the wire of your antenna. Sometimes often there is a choke. There is some cheap things where the box is empty, but often you have a choke because you go from unbalanced to balanced to unbalanced. So that's what that choke is doing, and it's I think you had the presentation on that. So I'm sure the guy who did that presentation talk about you want to cut the current that goes outside the coax, but so that's for at the antenna. But you want to have one also in your shack at the radio, because when the radio transmits, it's going to transmit outside the coax. So you want to block that current. And what I'm doing also is I'm on my at home, I have another choke that is on the ingress, on the side of my house outside at the ingress, because the coax running kind of parallel to the antenna is gonna the outside coax is gonna kind of couple with that antenna and get some of that RF. So I want to choke that thing before getting inside the house also. And I have a vertical antenna, and it's pretty quiet. I don't complain about the noise, and it's pretty quiet from 40 to 10 meters, and it's very efficient. I can show you all the contacts I made around the world, and I transmit with only 100 watts. And the amazing thing is, sometimes I hear, there's a European station, for example, there's a huge pileup, and you have people with power on the East Coast, and I go through a pileup with, if I can hear reasonably well the station, I can go through the pileup between 1 and 5 calls, and I get in.
Got it. I remember that guy. He said put chokes everywhere, if I recall. He was just a big advocate for putting chokes all over the place.
Yeah, but I see people. I see a guy who put a choke on. So I don't have any choke on my desk. I have the antenna is coming. I have a choke just before my power meter, and then it goes in the garage, and then I have a choke outside the garage, and then it goes to the antenna, and I have a choke at the antenna. That's the only chokes I have. I don't have any choke between the computer and my radio, between the anywhere else in the house, in my setup, on my desk, in my shack. I don't have any chokes. People, they like to put chokes everywhere, but if you cut the source of the prime, if you cut the prime at the source, you don't have to put chokes everywhere. I saw people putting chokes on their router on the fiber optic cable, which doesn't work.
Thanks.
No problem. Fan dipole. So the fan dipole is the same thing as a monoband dipole, but you put one wire for each band you want to work, and you have and you connect all those wires on the same feed point, and you have your fan dipole. So it's like a dipole. They're pretty easy to build. Physical building of the antenna is easy. The problem you may have is you may have a prime to tune that antenna, because every time you tune one band, you're gonna affect the other band. So you're gonna have to, cut and trim and try and cut and trim again and try and make sure you don't trim too much. And it's gonna be a bummer if you trim too much, because then you're gonna have to lengthen the wire or change the wire, and they're tricky to trim. But otherwise, they work pretty decently. They're kind of, it's like having 3 dipoles in, 3 separate dipole into one antenna. Like the dipole, you can install them as an inverted V, horizontal. You can put them vertical, which can be tricky sometimes. There's not much to say about the fact, besides the fact that they are kind of hard to trim or to tune. The next antenna I'm going to talk about is the trap dipole. So a trap dipole is like a dipole, and you have traps. So you're gonna have to have one. The number of band you want to work it's going to be the number of trap is going to be equal to the number of band you want to work -1. So for example, if you want to have a 3-band dipole, you're going to have 2 traps on each side, of course, of the antenna. You're going to have 2 traps. If you want to have a 6-band trap antenna, you're going to have 5 traps. So they are kind of once you figure out how to make those traps, they're kind of easy to build because it's like a dipole. The trick is to kind of be able to measure those traps. So to measure the trap, you can do that with an antenna analyzer. Now everyone has a nano VNA. So with the nano VNA, it's even easier to measure precisely the traps. And the traps are easy to build. You just put a piece of coax around a PVC. You have plenty of calculator online that's going to tell you, how much turn you want to have, and you measure the thing. When you build one, you just build the other one the same way, and they're gonna work. They don't need to be super precise, but that's gonna work. That's like dipole. That thing can be installed, horizontal, vertical, inverted V. The only thing is you want to make sure your trap they don't weigh too much, because if they weigh too much, then your thing is going to slope down and it's going to put some strength on the wire also. The problem with those antenna is you don't want to have too many traps, because every time you have a trap, you're going to have some losses. And you're gonna also increase the Q of your antenna on the lower bands. So meaning the bandwidth of your lower band is gonna be narrower and narrower. So if you want to build a 10, 15, 20, 40, and 80 meter antenna, you're gonna have 4 traps. And on 80 meter, your antenna, you're going to have to make a choice, because it's going to work on very, very few frequency on that band. So you're going to have to choose between a digital CW or SSB. And on SSB, you won't be able to even get the entire SSB band, because by going to that many trap, it's going to be very, very narrow, and it's going to be really inefficient on 80 meter. So that's the prime with those those trap antennas. I think the reasonable number of trap is going to be 2 or 3, but not more, because if you put more, then the last band is going to be very hard to use, and it's going to be very the bandwidth is going to be very narrow. The trap, they're working this way, so they are seen by the signal as an open. So if you're transmitting on, let's say, 10 meters, the signal goes here all the way to the trap, and the signal sees, oh, it's an open. Oops, sorry. It's an open, and so that's going to be your 10-meter antenna. Now you transmit with 15 meter. The signal is going to see that just as a loading coil. So and then it's going to continue here, and on 15 meter, it's going to see that as an open. So your antenna on 50 meter, only that part is going to work, and on the next band on 20 is going to go through here, and then you have the last part of your antenna that's going to be the 20 meter. So the advantage of that antenna, if you have a small lot and you don't have a lot of room, because you're going to trap, that's going to shorten a lot your antenna. So if you want to work on 40 meters, for example, and you don't have the room to put a full 40 meter antenna, you can put 1 trap, for example, or 2 traps, and have your antenna working on 10, 20, and 40. It's going to be that's going to have a way shorter antenna than what is the length? So a 10 meter on each side. It's going to be a 30 feet on each side. So it's going to be way shorter than 60 feet, for example, on 40 meters. So it's a good way to have an antenna if you have if you don't have a lot of room. But antenna, it's all about compromises. So you shorten the antenna, but then you're going to lose somewhere else, and you're going to lose on the bandwidth, and you're going to have some losses also because you're going to traps. But when you don't have anything else, any antenna is better than no antenna. So another antenna that is part of the dipole family is the doublet. So the doublet is an antenna. So let's say we're going to build an antenna that is going to be resonant on 80 meters. So we build that antenna on 80 meter, and because of the harmonics, that antenna, you're going to have a deep. So you're going to have a resonant point close to 40, 10, 15, and 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters. So if you look at the SWR of that antenna, you're going to see kind of a drop in SWR on all those bands, or close by those bands. Not exactly on those bands, but close by. So that means if you put an antenna tuner, you will be able to use that antenna pretty efficiently on all those bands, and even more than those bands. So the way to build a doublet is you put an antenna long enough for 80 meters, for example, and then you go from the antenna all the way to the tuner with a 400 ohm window line, and then you go to the piece of coax going to your radio. So here is the catch. If you want to have something that is efficient, you need to have an automatic antenna tuner that is installed outside your house. So I see people, what they do is they install the tuner on the eave of their roof, and then they have that ladder line go to the antenna, and then from the tuner to the radio with the coax. That's going to be very efficient. So you will be able to tune your antenna on all the bands you want, even the work bands. And if you cannot tune that antenna on some of the band, you just lengthen the ladder line, or the window line, or you shorten the window line, because the window line not only is going to provide you with a feed line that is very, very low loss, but also that window line is going to be an impedance transformer. And by lengthening or shortening that window line, you change that impedance transformation that will make the job of your antenna tuner kind of easier. And then you can have a very, very efficient antenna. If you get into antenna building and you want to really to optimize that thing, you can get software like SimNet or SimSmith, and you can do some math, measure your antenna, your wire, and then do some math to figure out what is the optimum length of window line. But you don't have to do that. You can just put any length, and if you cannot tune on a band, you just shorten or lengthen that wire, and you have your antenna is going to work on all the band from 80 all the way to 6 meters. But there's a catch here. If you install that antenna low, it's going to be inefficient on 80 because it's too low. And also, the more wire you're going to put, the more lobes you're going to develop. So meaning on 10 or 60 meters or 6 meters, you're going to have a lot of lobes on your antenna, and you're going to lose some efficiency. So I know people, what they do is they try to make their antenna to be as efficient. So they're going to calculate the height, they're going to calculate the length of the wire they want to make sure the antenna is going to be efficient, or they're going to have a good pattern on the band they really want. But that's next level. But if you want to build a doublet, it's super easy to build. There's nothing. It's just two pieces of wire, piece of ladder line, and the tuner. Yeah, and the ladder line, you want that thing away from metallic structures. You don't want to have that thing running down along a wall where you have a stucco, for example, because you have chicken wire inside the stucco. You don't want to have that thing, lying on the ground because it's not a shielded transmission line, so it's going to couple with anything around. So you want to have that thing kind of away from anything. So I'm going to skip this one because I already talked about that. So then you're going to find the off-center fed dipole. So the off-center fed dipole is like we saw before. A dipole is just a piece of wire cut at half a wavelength, and you feed that in the middle. And in the middle, you're going to have a low impedance. So if you move the feed point in that direction or that direction, the impedance is going to increase. So for example, on the dipole here, you have a 50 ohm. And if you take the same wire, you feed that at the end, like a half wave end fed antenna, here you're going to have a 2500 ohms. So by putting this at the kind of right place, so 1/4 of the wavelength, for example, you're going to have something that's going to be around 200 ohms. So, so here is an example. So that represents the currents on the antenna. So at half of the a quarter wavelength, so you can have so that's going to be half of so the scale is wrong here, because it's going to be, that's yeah, oh no, it's good, sorry. So at from the beginning, at the quarter wave wavelength, so in the middle of your half wavelength of dipole, so you're gonna have high current. But then on the other band, so for example 10 and 15 or 20 and 15, you're gonna be here. So you're gonna have no current and high voltage. So that you don't want that. So if you feed the antenna somewhere around here, you know, 1/6 of a wavelength, 1/5 or 1/4, you're going to be close to 200 ohm. So then the only thing you have to do is to put a 4-to-1 transformer, and you're going to bring that 200 ohm down to something that is going to be more reasonable. You're going to have a 1 to 1.5 to 1 or something like that on pretty much all the band if you when you feed that antenna like that. So that's how the off-center fed dipole works. Same thing, they're easy to build. You can, it's like a dipole, it's a wire antenna. So you can put them, any way you want, exactly like a dipole. You can put them, inverted V, inverted L, flat, vertical. You can put sloper. You can put, anything you want. And also, since that antenna is not a balanced antenna, you're going to have a transformer that's going to be a 4-to-1, but then you're going to need to have a choke just below the transformer. Some of the people selling those antennas, the good quality one, they're going to give you a box where you're going to have a 4-to-1 transformer and a choke. Most of them, you're going to have a 4-to-1 transformer, and then you're going to have to buy a choke to choke that that common mode current. And the G5RV. So the G5RV is an interesting antenna. So the guy who designed that antenna is Louis something, from UK. And so that guy was in the military, and he was deployed in North Africa. So when he came back, when he retired, he came back to UK. So he had a small lot, and he wanted to talk to his friend, I think it was on 20 meters in North Africa. So he started to work on making an antenna that is short and has a good radiation pattern on 20 meters. And he came up with that antenna. So there is people who love that antenna, and there's people who hate that antenna. And I think the people who love that antenna is the people who install that antenna correctly, and the people who hate it is because they didn't install the antenna correctly. So you have, I think it's 66 foot total length. And then you have a piece of 400 ohm window line. So that window line is a transformer. It's not a piece of feed line. It's there. It's doing an impedance transformation. So the length of the wire, the velocity factor, and all those things, they are very important to have that antenna working. It's a little bit harder to build that antenna because you need to do some math to calculate those things if you want to. The thing also is, if you look at, for example, the antenna book from the ARRL, they're going to give you some length, but the problem is you will have a hard time to find the component they're going to have the same characteristic than the one described in that book. So. Especially on the 450 ohm line. So you're going to have probably to tinker and play with it if you want to build an antenna like that. So, but that piece of thing does an impedance transformation. So, and then it goes to a 75. Originally, it was going to a 75 ohm coax all the way to the shack. So people were installing that. So, and also that thing is going to be 43 foot long, 38 on some cases. So that means you need to install the antenna high enough. If you don't install the antenna high enough, people I've seen, they kind of roll up that window line, which kind of changed the impedance. I think changed the impedance of that, the transformation impedance, and the antenna is completely detuned. Some people, they don't install the antenna high enough. They put the thing on the ground, and the same thing, the coupling with the ground, detune the antenna. The worst I saw is people, they think, oh, it's just a piece of feed line, I'm going to cut it. They cut it and they completely detune the antenna, and the antenna is not working. They cannot tune on some of the band, and they're complaining because the antenna is not working. It's just because they did a poor installation on that antenna. Usually those antennas, they work pretty well, but they're kind of, you need to be careful when you install them. And you're gonna find, so the G5RV, I think, is the antenna that has been, everyone is selling a G5RV. I'm putting G5RV between quotes because I think they are G5RV inspired. Because if you look at the, the length, if you look at how they build the thing, I think every company, they try to improve that antenna, and they did something. So they shortened the feed line, the 400 ohm window line. They use a 300 ohm line sometimes, but the length is not going to be the same. I mean, they do. There is several, G5RV. You're going to see a different flavors of G5RV. The guy who did the G5RV focused on the radiation pattern and tried to make that antenna work for him on 20 meter, and he realized, oh yeah, with no or very little effort with an antenna tuner, I can use that antenna on other band. So it became a multi-band antenna, but it wasn't designed as being a multi-band antenna. It's just because by luck. So then you have another guy, I think his name is Brian, ZS6BKW. He took that antenna, he put all those things into an antenna modeling software and tried to improve the antenna. So the ZS6BKW, Brian's antenna, is a little bit shorter. I mean, the sizes are different. It looks like a G5RV. The sizes are different, but his antenna it's easier to tune, especially on the work bands, because when Louis did that antenna, the work band didn't exist yet. Question on G5RV? Okay, I'm moving on to the random length wire antenna. So that's the easiest antenna you can build. You put a piece of wire, random length. I mean, I'm putting random between quotes again because it's not really random, but any length that is not some specific length that you don't want to use should work. You put that thing directly, on the back of your tuner, and you start transmitting. So that's very convenient for people who are doing SOTA, because you can take a piece of wire, throw it in the tree, just with a banana plug connected to the PL on the back of your radio. If you have especially if you have a radio like the Elecraft or any radio, you put that directly in the back of the tuner, and you can start transmitting. If you do that at home, you're gonna end up having a lot of common mode current into your shack, into your coax and everything. So you need to do more than just doing that. But the principle is that it's just put a piece of wire, and that should work. You need to have a good tuner though. And then you can start transmitting. The antenna should be efficient. The more wire you're going to put here, the more you're going to be efficient on those bands. So here I have a graph where I show the length of wire you want to avoid. So I have online. I have a program that does kind of produce those graphs. If you want to work, for example, 40, 20, 15, and 10. you can have a 12-meter long wire, or you can have a 16, 17, or 18, but you cannot have 20 meters or 21 meters. You can have a 22, 23, but you cannot have 25, etc., etc. And if you want to work, for example, 80, 40, 20, 15, so meaning one more band, you cannot have. So the minimum wire you want is it's 22 meter, and then you have all the white parts is the part that you can use as a length. It doesn't need to be precise. You don't want to be in the red part. That's all.
Hey Fred, it's 2000 here. Almost time to wrap.
Yeah,
And
I'm
Ron,
almost done.
Ron KF0FBI has one question in the chat when you're ready for it.
Okay, so I was going to talk about half-wave and fed. We talked about that before, and then I was showing kind of vertical antennas. What I was saying also is any antenna we talked about before, they can be used as a vertical antenna. So, for example, here on that slide, you see here. This one is a trap. We talk about the trap dipole. That's a trap vertical. So this one is the DX commander. It's so this one you have a wire per band. That's the same thing as an fan dipole. Sorry. This one is an end-fed antenna. It's a vertical antenna, but it's basically an end-fed antenna. So any antenna we saw before as a dipole, we can decline that as a vertical antenna. And I was not going to talk about those things. Yeah, one thing I would like to talk about is the ham stick, because especially newcomers, they think ham stick is the solution to their problem. So the problem with the ham stick is you can make it work, and it's going to be hard to tune, but since they're very, very short, they're going to have a very, very high Q, meaning a very narrow bandwidth. So if you want to use a ham stick to do FT8, you tune your ham stick to do, on the frequency for FT8, and that's pretty much all the thing you're going to use that thing for. Because if you look here, for example, on 1402, you have already almost you have a SWR of 5 or 10, between 5 and 10, and then at 14 almost 030, you are back to SWR of 10. So you're going to have a very, very narrow bandwidth on those antennas. So you can use them, but not really as a general purpose antenna. You can use them as very for specific frequency. Don't think that by putting ham stick you will be able to do whatever you want on HF. So that was a recap. So I'm not gonna focus on that. And the guy who was running, he's a silent key now, was running a Dr. Zin at the RRL. So that's a quote from him. Do not overspend on your transceiver and skimp on your antenna. A poor antenna system can seriously degrade your operating experience. So, kind of, it's easy to buy an expensive and shiny radio with a lot of buttons and colors and everything. But then if you don't, what's going to make you make contacts it's your antenna. It's not the radio. You can buy a sports car, a Lamborghini, and if you want to drive on off-road, you will not go fast and you will not go far. That's all.
Well, Fred, thanks so much. That was a great presentation. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Anybody have any last questions for Fred before we get to the door prize drawing?
Yeah, absolutely. Great presentation. Thank you so much. You said
Oh,
something
no
about
problem.
a question in the chat. Oh, yeah. Ron FPI asks Octopus. Octopus 4-band ham stick antenna fed by one feed line and suggestions to tune it.
I think I answered that question on the last slide.
Yes.
Yeah, I
okay.
think so.
It's going to be really hard to tune because the bandwidth on those ham stick is so narrow than 1/8 of an inch more or less, it's going to completely kind of switch your frequency. And also, when you tune an antenna, if you're I think there is an entire presentation on how to tune an antenna. If you are close to the antenna, your body next to the antenna is going to change the tuning, and when you walk away from the antenna, the tuning is going to be different. Your feed line is going to be important also, because especially if you don't have a choke, your feed line becomes part of the antenna. And I think probably the person who did that presentation about the choke probably talked about the feed line. And if you don't have a choke at your antenna, your feed line becomes part of the antenna. And then you have an antenna that is not only a dipole, but a tripole. So you're gonna have 3 branches. So by tuning, changing the length of your feed line, you have your SWR that jump up and down. So tuning an antenna, and especially an antenna like that, where you have a very, very narrow bandwidth, is going to be very hard.
Thank you again. And I know you mentioned you felt some trepidation given this presentation, but you did a great job, and this is exactly what clubs like ours and other clubs are looking for. So you did a great job. Thank you again.
On a prime. So there is Ben, who said that he had a prime with ladder line. It was a ladder line or a window line?
Looks like ladder line, or that's what he typed at least.
Yeah, because so window line, if you kind of have less prime, you kind of twist them. So they are less sensitive to the wind. But also, I have a cable. I have on my blog, I have a page where you can calculate the difference between cables. You can compare 2 cables, and you take a ladder line, a window line. You're gonna see some numbers, and you take the same window line wet, and that's gonna change everything. It's going to be very sensitive to the, those lines that are great, but are very sensitive to the environment.
Perfect. And I think Bill YKV, if you had something on Hamfest, if you want to give any information, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see here. First of all, that was an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. However, main reason for talking is about the upcoming Hamfest this weekend. It's Sunday. Just in case some people haven't gotten the notice, setup will be at 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon at the Adams County Fairgrounds in the usual place. Some of you probably have gotten an email from me this evening letting me know what your assignment is to help out. If you don't like it, or you want to do something else, please just reply and let me know what you know. We are short of volunteers. So please, if you know of somebody who can help, or any one of you who haven't signed up to help yet can do so, please let me know as soon as possible. We really need help with the food and in the kitchen. And so, right now we have 2 people, but Alex and Sarah can only last there till about 9:30. Okay, Ben, I saw your thing. Can you? I don't have your. I can look up your email address or something like that. So, and I'll do that.
And can you just drop it in the chat for me?
Yeah, well, that too. So otherwise, that's all I had. Are there any questions about Hamfest? I do have door prizes, gift certificates. I've got 160 hot dog buns in my kitchen that are above dog level. And I've also got 144 hot dogs sitting in the freezer. I need to go out and get drinks and other things like that tomorrow. So I will, I'm still running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and I'll help where I can, but I'm probably going to help out in about half a dozen different places around the Hamfest. And just look for me. I'll either be wearing a cowboy hat or my head will be missing, and I'll just be running around. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak, Daron.
Yeah, of course, Bill. Thank you so much for helping out with this. And yeah, it's a lot of effort, and it'll be over here in a little bit. So appreciate it again. So thanks again. Yes. Yeah.
And Fred,
All
if you're
right.
still there, Matt Zimmerman asked if you can make the slide deck available. Did you say it's on your website?
Yeah, they're on my website. I can send you the link right now on the chat if you want.
Yeah, just drop it in the chat if you would.
1 sec.
And while he's doing that, I rolled the drum, and the winner of the door prize this evening with 7 entries is Ed Reed, AE0YR. Welcome, or congratulations, Ed.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get a choke tomorrow. How about that?
Don't buy a choke. You can't build it.
You're right. I'll build it tomorrow.
Buy some wire.
Yeah.
Right.
Just a piece of coax around the right toroid. You need to have a 43 or 31, and then you don't put too much. People there they think, oh, more is better. It's not always better, and you have a choke.
Excellent. Thanks.
I put the link on the chat.
Thank you, sir. All right.
And I made
Unless
the
anybody
link.
else. There you go. Unless anybody has any other comments or questions for Fred here on his presentation, let us know. But we might start to wrap things up. Okay, well, nothing heard. Thanks again, Fred. We hope to have future presentations. I know we got involved with Dick N6WHV, I think. Not sure how that happened, but it's awesome to see that happening, and we'd appreciate if you can give any future presentations. So thanks again.
I have other presentation if you want me to give a presentation. So especially on antennas, I have one that I kind of designed an antenna live in front of you using a modeling software.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Well,
Do you
thanks
do
again.
house calls?
No, no. I think my wife wouldn't be happy if I can start doing that. So since I'm here, I'm going to plug my stuff.
Please.
I am running a website that does propagation, graph propagation. So I dropped the link in the chat. So you have solar activity, and the thing that I think is interesting is the graph I sent you here. It gives you what band is working and how well is it working right now. So, and you're CQ zone 4. So right now for you, it's open. It's open on 15, 20. 30, 40, but only towards the US. There is no DX, no hope of DX tonight. Sorry.
Excellent. Yeah, I also saw, I think Dick forwarded over an email about your guys' field day and some of your results and some putting all that data together. I think that was pretty cool to see as well.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
How many contacts did you make during field day?
Let me see if I can bring those stats up.
Is it in 100, the 1,000, the 10,000s?
Less than 1,000. It's more about the experience for us. We haven't really pushed a lot of the contesting so much. Some of the guys are interested in contesting. I'm trying to find the stats. Dick, I think who you contacted, he was the one that compiled that. So I'm going to try to find that, but it was less than 1,000. It was a lot of CW contacts from one person, and that was the really dedicated person. So that was awesome to see. But some
That's
voice
cool.
FT8, yeah. So fairly casual though. Okay. Anything else for anyone? Otherwise, we will shut things down.
Okay. Thanks for running the meeting, Daron.
Thank you all again for attending. YouTube.com/Denver Radio Club if you missed it. And we'll see you all next month and next week's and next weekend. So for Hamfest. So you all take care. Have a good one.
Good night all.
Bye, guys. Thank you very much.